Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Grant Application and Management Workshop. My name is Joe Dukes, and I will provide an overview of 3 grant programs administered by the Grants and Loans Unit. They are the Boat Launching Facility Grant, primarily for motorized vessels, the Non-Motorized Boat Launching Facility Grant, and the Ram Repair and Modification Grant programs. My contact information is provided at the bottom of the screen. You can also find my contact information on DBW's Grants and Loans webpage. This workshop is recorded, and this PowerPoint will be made available on DBW's website. DBW's mission is to provide safe and convenient public access to California's waterways and leadership in promoting safe, enjoyable, and environmentally sound recreational boating. Through the Harbors and Navigation Code 72.5, the Department has approval to manage these grant programs, with authorization to appropriate funds through Harbors and Navigation Code 85.2. Primary funding comes from the Harbors and Watercraft Revolving Fund through revenue generated by vessel registration fees, repayment of DBW loans, and vessel fuel tax. Before I go through the agenda, if you have not logged onto OGA, DBW has provided an OGA training video available on YouTube. The link on the OGA training video is provided on the screen. The goals of this workshop is on grant processes, not the technicalities of OGA or project-specific needs. You may contact me after this workshop if you have questions specific to your project. First, I will go over the 3 grant programs administered by the Grants and Loans Unit. Then look at the program's description, requirements, and restrictions. I will provide an overview of DBW's grant processes, first discussing the pre- and post-award processes, then go over the engineering, reimbursement, and finally the closeout process. So the goals for this workshop is to provide a brief description of the grants associated with boating access, describe the life cycle of the grant process, including who does what and when, describe the awarding and grant management compliance processes. For this workshop, I will be using the Motorized Boat Launching Facility grant program in my examples. Karen Deal, Chief of Grants and Loans, and Deborah Holmes, Manager of the Grants and Loans Unit, are also available to assist with questions. So let's get started. All 3 grant programs are awarded on a competitive and on a reimbursement basis. Funding is limited. The first program is the Boat Launching Facility Grant Program. This program provides grants to local government agencies to develop or improve public boat launching facilities, primarily for motorized vessels. The average budget for this program has been around $7 million in each of the past few years. However, the state of the Harbors and Watercraft Revolving Fund has been diminishing over time. The department is currently looking for solutions. Funding can be used for the reimbursement of design, construction, inspection, and permitting expenses. The online grant application deadline is February 1 of each year. The next program is the Non-Motorized Boat Launching Facility Grant Program. This program provides funds to develop or improve public non-motorized boating access. The average budget for this program has been around $2 million in each of the past few years. However, this is subject to change. Funding can be used for the reimbursement of design, construction, inspection, and permitting expenses. The grant amount varies from $100,000 to $1 million. And the deadline to submit your applications through OGA is February 1 of each year. And the third program is the Ram Repair and Modification Grant Program. This program provides funding to quickly restore safe and convenient public boating access to facilities that were damaged. The average budget for this program has been around $1.5 million in each of the past few years. This program's budget is subject to change as well. To qualify for this program, the proposed project must be previously funded through DBW. Funding is used to restore boating access or address health and safety issues. The grant amount varies from $10,000 to $750,000. The deadline to submit your application through OGA is also February 1 of each year. This is a list of items that can be funded through the Boat Launching Facility Grant Program. A similar list of fundable scope items for the Non-Motorized Boat Launching Facility and the Ramp Repair and Modification Grant Program were included in an email package that was sent to the attendees. They are also available on DBW's webpage. Also included in the email package and available on DBW's webpage is the list of items not fundable through the Boat Launching Facility Grant Program. However, there are exceptions. For example, landscaping may be eligible if it is a requirement by the permitting agency. Shade structures may also be eligible if it is justified. If the facility is located in an area with average temperatures in the summer consistently of over 100 degrees. Maintenance dredging is not eligible. However, dredging may be eligible if it is a part of the construction. Now, this is a list of items that may disqualify you from the Boat Launching Facility Grant Program. For example, your proposed project is not fundable if the facility is not open and accessible to all public boaters. If the property will not be owned or leased by the grantee for at least 20 years from the completion of the project. Application requirements you need to know. The grant does not fund the cost to complete CEQA or NEPA. You must complete CEQA or NEPA documents at no cost to the state before any grant funds would be disbursed. You are required to submit a resolution adopted by your governing board, which authorizes you to apply for funding and to accept the grant funding. An example will be provided in the following slides. Project management and administrative overhead costs are not eligible for reimbursement. DBW considers these costs as the grantee's contribution to the project. A feasibility report, cost estimate, and a concept design are required documents in addition to your online application. Pictures and maps with locations of the proposed project are also helpful as well. DBW engineers are available and can assist with a concept design if you make that request to DBW well in advance. Here are examples of a resolution to apply and to accept grant funding. These examples were included in your email package and are available on DBW's webpage. Grant requirements you need to know. The proposed project facility must be open and accessible to all boaters. The grantee must own and have a long-term lease for at least 20 years after construction of the project is completed. $13 is the most the grantee can charge for a combination of entry, parking, launch, and use of the facility. Fees can be increased annually according to the percentage change using the Consumer Price Index. If the increase is in excess of the Consumer Price Index limits, written pre-approval by DBW is required. All contracts that a grantee wishes to enter into the project must be reviewed prior to advertisement and award by DBW staff and be within the grant's itemized budget. This will be discussed in the upcoming slides. All change orders of $5,000 or greater requires written pre-approval by DBW. Contracts must include provisions identified in the grant agreement, and more details of this worksheet will be provided in the upcoming slides. Feasibility Report Cost Table. The cost table provides a breakdown of itemized costs for each project. Please be advised that the total grant amount, once approved, cannot be increased should costs extend beyond the grant funding. The grantee will need to find alternative sources for payments. A major part of the feasibility report development is to build a project cost table that encompasses the entire project scope. Should you be selected for grant funding, DBW will work with you to develop a similar cost table like this sample. The information you provide in the initial feasibility report with your application will be utilized in this process. All contracts to the proposed project, including engineering and construction, must be within the itemized project cost. Escalation funds are available only to augment construction expense lines items due to expected escalation in materials and labor costs when the project is constructed. The construction contingency funds are reserved for unforeseen and/or emergency construction expenses when pre-approved by DBW. The consultant and construction worksheets were included in the email package. The worksheets contain provisions identified in the grant agreement and must be incorporated into the consultant or construction contracts of the project. Now we will look at the post-application process. So what happens after you successfully submit your online grant application? After the February 1 application deadline, DBW will advise you on the application received and if any additional information is required. Application scoring. DBW staff will prepare a benefit cost analysis to evaluate the financial impact of the proposed project. Once DBW staff completes its initial review of the application for completeness, a separate team reviews and ranks the applications based on the criteria listed. You should consider each of these criteria when completing the application. For example, are improvements to the boat launching facility critical for health and safety? Is there a demonstrated demand for boating access in your community? This is the application scoring worksheet. Sample scoring worksheets were included in the email package. As you can see, health and safety and demands for boating access are important criteria to consider when applying for grant funding. Each program has a similar scoring process like this sample. So what happens if you've been selected for grant funding? DBW staff will most likely come out to visit the proposed project site unless we have been there recently. The proposed project will be heard at one of 4 DBW Commission meetings for advice and comment. The location of the proposed project will affect which of the 4 meetings it will be scheduled. DBW staff will work with you to develop a new feasibility report that will be included in the commission booklets provided to commissioners. The new feasibility report would ultimately become a part of the grant agreement. The grant agreement would then be executed within 1 to 2 months after the commission meeting. So what happens after the grant is executed? You must have staff who can manage and monitor the grant project at no cost to the state. You must consider to either design in-house or hire an engineering consultant. The grant will only cover direct charges, not to include benefits if you are using in-house engineers. Reimbursements for engineering staff must include signed timesheets, certification of staff experience, dates and hours worked, and the work completed. Remember, all contracts require prior written approval by DBW. All engineering contracts must be within the engineering line item budget. You will need knowledgeable staff to complete permitting requirements. It is the responsibility of the grantee to apply for and obtain approval of all required permits. You would need to consider if you have knowledgeable staff to do the inspections as well. You will need to provide DBW with a project and a maintenance schedule within 60 days of the grant agreement execution. The project schedule may be updated and adjusted as the project progresses. Engineering review process. Engineering designs must be submitted to DBW at a 30%, 60%, 90%, and the final stage or 100% for review and approval. You will need to build in 3 to 4 weeks to your project schedule to allow DBW staff time to review and respond to each of the phases. The design drawings must be submitted in 11 by 17 hard copy or electronically on disk, PDF preferred. DBW reviews each submittal for conformance with the Layout, Design, and Construction Handbook. I will provide more information regarding the handbook in the upcoming slides. This is a sample engineering design at the 90% level. It was submitted to DBW in the 11 by 17 format. As you can see, the quality of work we will be expecting. This is a sample engineering review memorandum that will be included with a response letter from DBW. The engineering review memorandum itemizes concerns of the grantee's engineering submittal at each phase. Don't be discouraged regarding all the do not recommend for approvals. It just means that the entire submittal is not ready for moving forward. If there are comments on the memorandum, you will need to address and respond to the comments in the next submittal. Submittals can also be returned if it is insufficient or if it is missing crucial material or information. This is the Layout, Design, and Construction Handbook for Small Craft Boat Launching Facility. A link is provided on the slide. This is a great reference for your engineers during the design phase. DBW is also working on an update to this handbook. Now we will go through the reimbursement process. The grants are on a reimbursement basis. Grantees shall request for reimbursement at least quarterly, no more than once a month, for any reimbursable expenses incurred during that period. Please do not wait until the project is complete to submit one big reimbursement request. It puts your project in jeopardy if your billing is incorrect or if you accumulate costs incorrectly towards the project. In your reimbursement request package, you will need a request letter in your agency's letterhead. I will talk about that in the next slide. Complete a funding request and project status form. This was included in the email package, and we will also talk more about that in the upcoming slides. Include invoices and payment with your request. Submit the original plus one copy signed by the person designated on the resolution. All attachments must be upright in the portrait format and one-sided. DBW does withhold 10% for retention. You shall request retention release at completion of the project. Keep in mind, reimbursement can take some time to process. The more complete a package you submit, the faster it will be processed. 60% of the time, submittals are incomplete. This can cause lengthy delays in the reimbursement process. Here is a sample reimbursement request letter. The submittal is in the grantee's letterhead. The date of the request is at the top, along with the grant agreement number in the subject line. The general information of the project is in the body of the letter requesting reimbursement for work completed, and signed by the person authorized in the resolution. This is the funding request and project status form that was included in the email package. This form must be included in the reimbursement submittal. This form is formulated with protected cells. You will need to input the project number, the date of the submittal, the claim number, the project's name and agreement number, input the date of the invoice, the contractor's name, the invoice number, and each expense should be inputted in the appropriate categories for engineering, permits, construction, and inspection. Input the budget allowance according to the project's feasibility cost table. You may contact DBW for assistance in this process. Then provide the percentage of completion level of the project. Have the appropriate person sign at the bottom left corner under penalty of perjury, certifying that all items and amounts shown are correct and that all work has been performed in accordance with the requirements of the reference contract. Even if you do not have any expense at this period of time, you should still complete this form and email it to DBW as a quarterly report. So how do you close out the project? To close out the project, the grantee must initiate grant closure with a written request letter in the agency's letterhead. Grant closure can also be initiated by requesting a release of retention. The grantee will need to provide DBW with a notice of completion or a letter of acceptance of the project's completion, as-built of the project on disk or by electronic file is also required to be provided to DBW. DBW will conduct a final inspection of the project site. It is the grantee's responsibility to operate and maintain the facility for the 20 years from the date of completion. DBW will also send a letter to your local state legislature notifying completion of the project. That concludes the grant application and management workshop. My contact information is provided on the slide. Please contact me by phone or email if you have any questions. A link to the online grant application is provided. Please take the opportunity to review the OGA training video now available on YouTube. A link is also provided on slide. Thank you everyone for attending.